Have you ever stopped to think that maybe what you were taught about work is wrong? Yes, that idea that you were born to study, land a good job, and hopefully retire one day might actually be what's keeping you from your true life purpose. Billy Graham once said that true faith moves mountains, but it also moves careers, decisions, and destinies. What if I told you that your calling isn't in your resume, but in your spirit? Most people live on professional autopilot. Wake up, work, pay bills, repeat. The problem isn't working hard, it's working without meaning. What no one tells you is that work was created with purpose, not as punishment. And the more you ignore that, the more lost you'll feel. But take heart, this isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new way of seeing the Christian life, one filled with more faith, reflection, and clarity. If you feel like you're just surviving, this message is for you, because there's a huge difference between having a job and living with purpose. And once you understand that difference, you'll realize you were called for so much more. Join me on this journey and get ready to question everything you've been taught about success. Most people wake up on Monday with a heavy heart, as if work was some kind of divine punishment. But the truth is, God gave Adam work before sin entered the world. In other words, work didn't come from the fall, it came from purpose. It was meant to be an act of creative expression, stewardship of the earth, and partnership with the Creator. Have you ever considered that your office or small business could actually be a garden meant to be cultivated with faith and intentionality? When we see work only as a way to pay bills, we lose the beauty of Christian life and the deeper meaning of our spirituality. The original plan was always to work with purpose, not out of fear of financial stress. As Billy Graham once said, work is not a curse, it's a calling. What if instead of asking, what can I do to earn more, we started asking, what was I called to build in this world? That simple shift in mindset can turn even a boring routine into a divine mission. Want to see that in action? Think of the gardener who sees his job not just as mowing lawns, but as creating beauty, or the mother who sees raising her children not just as a task, but as a ministry. The secret lies in remembering that life's purpose begins the moment we choose to serve with what we have. Survival makes us rush, purpose makes us bloom, and if you still feel stuck chasing a paycheck to measure your worth, hang on, something far more freeing is just around the corner. Society teaches us that success equals financial stability. From a young age, many of us are taught to find a safe job, even if it means silencing the calling that burns inside. But the kingdom of God runs on a different standard. Instead of chasing a paycheck, God invites us to pursue purpose. After all, real security doesn't come from a monthly salary. It comes from faith in a God who never fails. Here's the contrast. The world says, work hard, retire early, and enjoy life later. God says, discover your calling, live with intention, and I will take care of you. A real-life example of this is someone who leaves behind a career that no longer makes sense in order to follow a mission, like the banker who gave it all up to start a non-profit, or the teacher who discovered her gift for healing and now works in Christian therapy. What led these people wasn't salary, it was purpose. Of course, bills still need to be paid. But here's the deeper, and maybe uncomfortable, truth. Those who live chasing a paycheck will always be vulnerable. But those who live by purpose have access to provision that isn't tied to the economy, but to divine favor. Billy Graham often preached this very idea: follow God's calling and everything else will follow you. And the curious thing is that when we change our focus, doors that were once shut begin to open. Looking for a job is like placing a bucket under a faucet. It's limited, dependent on external conditions. But seeking purpose is like digging a well. It takes more effort, but connects you to a limitless source. Those who depend on a job live at the mercy of the economy. the boss, the market, but those who seek their purpose, activate faith, attract favor, and walk in deeper spirituality. The difference is striking and liberating. The Bible shows us this over and over. Joseph was sold as a slave, but stayed focused on his calling. David spent years in obscurity before becoming king. Paul made tents, but his heart burned for the mission. None of these men were chasing jobs. They were aligned with the purpose God placed in their hands. And if today you're stuck in a role that doesn't make sense anymore, maybe it's time to trade your resume for moments of prayer and reflection. Start simple. Write down everything you love doing, the gifts people often recognize in you, and the problems in the world that stir your heart. That's where purpose usually reveals itself. Stop asking, where can I get hired? And start asking, where can I serve with what God gave me? When you live like that, you become a solution, and people who are solutions are never forgotten. Which leads us to a crucial point about what truly lasts in life. Jobs come and go, bosses change, roles shift, contracts end, sometimes overnight. But the calling God placed in you is eternal. Moses had no ID badge or corporate ladder. David was a shepherd before becoming a king. Paul was imprisoned, beaten, rejected, and still never stopped living his mission. This shows us that what sustains you isn't the job, but the calling. Once you understand this truth, the fear of losing your job begins to fade. Your confidence is no longer tied to something shaky. You might get fired, your business might fail. Plan A might become Plan Z. And still, God's purpose for your life remains untouched. Billy Graham once said, "God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called." And this especially applies when everything seems uncertain. Want to live this out practically? Nurture your faith during unstable seasons. Use time away from work to develop gifts you've kept hidden. Learn something new, serve someone, create something with your hands. Calling doesn't depend on a paycheck or a job title. It depends on obedience. And speaking of calling, have you ever considered how your work itself can be a practical expression of that divine mission? Work doesn't have to be a burden. It can be a way of worshiping God. Sadly, the world has taught us that we only work to pay bills. But God created us with gifts and creativity so that our work could be an extension of our calling. When we use our talents aligned with His kingdom, our work gains meaning, value, and transformational power. Think of the carpenter who prays while building furniture, asking that his work bless whoever uses that table, or the young entrepreneur who turns her business into a channel of provision for struggling families. That's living your work as an expression of purpose. And you can start small by simply asking God, how can I serve today with what I know how to do? That one prayer could change your entire week. Working by faith is different from just clocking in. It's understanding that your gift comes from heaven, and every task, no matter how small, can be covered in spirituality. That's what sets apart the average worker from someone who carries a calling. And when work stops being just an obligation and becomes a mission, something powerful happens, including how you see yourself in the world. We live in a culture that encourages consumption, but forgets that we were created to produce. God didn't create you just to earn a paycheck, pay bills, and repeat the cycle. He shaped you with unique gifts, just like Joseph, David, and Daniel, men who impacted generations by activating what was within them, not by chasing a good job. Their work was a consequence of their gifts, not the other way around. Maybe you're in a job that drains you without realizing that what God placed in you is precisely what will lead you out. The gift of speaking, teaching, cooking, advising, designing, leading, all of these are keys to provision and purpose. As Proverbs 18:16 says, "A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before the great." But for that to happen, you need the courage to leave autopilot mode and act in faith. First step, discover your gift. Ask for feedback from trusted people, take vocational tests, try new activities. Then start using it in a practical way. Build a social media profile, offer help, bless someone with what you have. You weren't made to depend, you were made to influence. And the more you activate your gift, the more you'll notice something extraordinary. The Bible is clear. Provision follows purpose, and purpose is revealed through your gift. God never asked Moses for his resume, he asked what was in his hand. In the same way, he's not concerned with your titles, but with your willingness to use what you already have. Joseph interpreted dreams. David played the harp and knew how to fight. Daniel interpreted visions. And all of these gifts opened massive doors. Many people chase money as if it's the answer, but in the kingdom, it's the activated gift that attracts favor and provision. It's like heaven itself moves when you begin living out what you were created for. Want a modern example? The woman who cooked out of love and now owns a thriving bakery. The young man who edited videos as a hobby and became a leading audiovisual professional. They didn't chase money, they chased purpose. In practice, ask yourself, what's in my hands today that could serve someone? It might be a creative talent, technical knowledge, or a relational skill. The secret isn't in what you lack, but in what has already been placed in you. And as you use it in faith, you'll see something even more powerful taking shape on your path. Want to be promoted in God's kingdom? Then learn to solve problems. Jesus did this all the time. Healed, taught, fed, delivered. Everywhere he went, he met needs. And those who do the same never go unnoticed. The world values degrees and connections. The kingdom values solutions. Those who solve problems with wisdom and faith are inevitably elevated. This applies to every sphere. At work, in ministry, at home. That employee who anticipates solutions becomes a reference. The homemaker who turns her routine into a place of peace exercises spiritual leadership. The entrepreneur who creates something new to ease someone else's burden is living out her calling. Billy Graham said, if you want to be great, serve. Serving with purpose is the path to favor. In practice, start by observing what pain are people around you facing? How can you help? Don't just think about what you'll gain. Think about how well you can serve. The promotion will come at the right time. Because when we position ourselves as the answer, God takes care of the rest. And it's precisely along this path of serving and stewarding that we begin to understand something even deeper about our identity. From the very beginning, God created us to have dominion, not to live off scraps or be trapped in a system. Genesis 1:26 speaks of authority, of rulership, of leadership. But the world keeps trying to convince us that we must rely on jobs, governments, or luck. True spirituality, however, reminds us we are children of the King, called to reign, not just survive. Jesus restored this truth when he made us kings and priests, Revelation 5:10. That means you're not a victim, you're a ruler. And rulership begins within. Take charge of your mind, your time, your habits, your finances. The Christian life is a journey of overcoming, where faith and purpose walk hand in hand. You don't need permission to live your calling. Heaven has already authorized you. Want to break free from dependency mode? Start by taking responsibility for your life. Read books like The Servant by James C. Hunter or Atomic Habits by James Clear. All practical tools for building discipline, leadership, and focus. Seek mentors, set goals, be intentional. When you understand you were made to reign, fear begins to lose its grip. And that leads us to one powerful truth: the difference between a position and a purpose. A title is temporary, but purpose is eternal. Joseph was governor of Egypt, but that was just part of the plan. Daniel served under different kings, yet his core never changed. Paul planted churches, wrote letters, was imprisoned, but never stopped living his calling. And Jesus, he never had a formal job, yet fulfilled his mission perfectly. That shows us something powerful. You don't need a title to live with purpose, just direction. Jobs come and go, bosses change, seasons shift. but those with a calling live consistently, even through transitions. As Matthew 6:33 says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." When purpose is the center, everything else aligns, even the resources you thought you had to chase. So if today you feel like you've lost a position, take a deep breath. Maybe it wasn't a loss, but a disguised promotion. Use this moment to pursue what truly matters, your life's purpose. And the best part? When you start living with that focus, life stops being about survival and becomes a mission. Now let me ask you, are you going to keep living for a paycheck? Or finally start living for your purpose? You can't keep ignoring the calling burning inside you. You were created by an intentional God, a God who doesn't waste talents and certainly doesn't waste lives. Everything you heard today wasn't just a reflection. It was a call to action. So what's it going to be? Keep dreading Mondays or turn your calling into a lifestyle? What will you do with the gifts God gave you? What practical step can you take today? Start small, but start. Share this video with someone who also needs to wake up to their purpose. Drop a comment below. What part of this message impacted you the most? And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, because here, every video is a new piece of the puzzle in your life of purpose. This journey is just beginning, and I want to see you grow for real.